I'm not sure why we're getting off the bus here and walking up this place, but I suppose we'll find out. It's a long walk to wherever we're going. I suppose the top of the castle or whatever. On the way to the firing of the cannon is an art gallery with, among other things, reproductions of old cars. Also a lot of sunflowers and a grown-up angel. The long walk here inside the fort is lined with dozens of little art galleries. And apparently it's tradition that every night they fire a cannon at 9 o'clock, which in the old days apparently meant getting...
I don't think it's every... I don't know. Maybe it is. We'll have to okay, that's fine. Okay, I'm just going to sit down here, John.
They put all the lights out so you can't see very much. So the drummers approach. Oh, shit. An age-old custom in Havana that at a certain time, 9 or 8 o'clock at night, they fired the cannon and with a lot of preliminaries, and that announced that the gates to the walls were about to close, and the city would therefore be closed off, and you couldn't get in during the night. Well, probably a very sensible system. What made it difficult to videotape was I didn't know exactly when they were going to fire the cannon, so I had to keep wasting tape, keeping the camera on just in case. Anyway, where we go next is very interesting. When daylight came, we set off again, and we went to the Literacy Museum. And the Literacy Museum is in an old a setting of what used to be a camp and what used to be actually the army headquarters when Batista, the dictator, was in power. And when he fell, the Castro government turned the place into a rehabilitation center for Castro's soldiers. And among the places there was the Literacy Museum. When they took over, there was like about 42% literacy or something like that in the country. Half the country couldn't read, and they set into form this incredible campaign to teach people to read. They sent out 3,000 teachers, 30,000 teachers I think they sent all over the country, some barely out of school themselves, up into the mountains in these remote villages with Chinese lanterns to light the way, just teaching people to read. It was an incredible campaign. Within a year, they had taught 1 million people to read and reduced illiteracy to 4%. And then they carried the campaign to other countries. They even gave people their first eye test and gave them glasses if they needed them. So we'll see that at the Literary Museum. I couldn't understand what the curator was saying because she was in Spanish, and I wasn't near enough, and my hearing isn't good enough to hear most of the translation, so you'll just have to take my word for it. Is the museum about literacy, the abolished literacy, when the illiteracy rather, when the revolution set in, alphabetization.
I'm also the only one in the world with this kind of subject, until now.
Mi nombre es Luisa Campos, soy la directora del museo.
She is Luisa Campos and she is the director of this museum.
El museo está adscrito a la Universidad de Ciencias Pedagógicas Enrique José Barona.
This museum belongs to the Pedagogical Science University Enrique José Barona, because they were children. In 1961, Cuba was free of China, thanks to the Chinese Republic.
I'm sure it's a fascinating story about how they abolished illiteracy. Unfortunately, I can't understand it from somebody talking in Spanish for half an hour, even with somebody translating, and I can't tell what they're saying very clearly. The museum itself illustrates it probably a lot better. With a big display of booklets and identity cards and postcards, blackboards with exercises on them, lots of inspiring marches. Standing in the lobby was what looked like a sort of a policeman, but I guess he was some kind of literary policeman. It wasn't explained, or if it was, I didn't understand it. I mean, it is a worthy achievement to take a country, any country that was probably largely illiterate, and make it literate within a relatively small number of years.
Far places in Havana.
Library full of volumes. I tried to look at one of the volumes, but they won't let me. Huge array of booklets and brochures and books and things. Yes, I can. Well, that gives some clue. It was probably organised in brigades to make sure certain areas and groups learn to speak, learn to write and read, and I'm sure that's significant because maestros almost certainly means teachers, but I don't know what it means. I'll ask. It means they are going to continue being, which doesn't mean much to me, I'm afraid. What looks like an old-fashioned English telephone booth is an empty shell. It's actually just the entrance to, or rather outside the entrance to, a jazz club. Fast food isn't always what you expect. For example, a hamburger might come with shredded lettuce and cucumber in it. The French fries though look delicious. This is a semi-open air cafe very at the end of the block in which my hotel is situated. White shirt. Different crowd over there. We're going to another school. Don't really understand it. Why there always seem to be big lineups outside banks. I mean, surely everybody doesn't have the money in a bank and want it at the same time. But it seems to be that way. Some are starting to go in at any rate. Oh, they stopped.